Good afternoon, and welcome to today's NHLBI Small Biz Hangout. I'm Chris Sassiella, a regulatory specialist at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. I'll be today's moderator, but before we get into the bulk of our presentation today, what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about my office. The Office of Translational Alliances and Coordination has a number of resources that are of potentially significant value to you, our small business awardees and applicants, as well as other awardees innovating in the heart, lung, blood, or sleep space. As one of those resources myself, I'm a regulatory specialist, and I work with our applicants and awardees to help them understand a regulatory path forward for their biomedical innovation development. And that takes many forms. It can be via email, or one-on-one phone conversation. It can be through resources such as today's Hangout. We are here as an office, and I as a resource, as well as some of my other colleagues, an entrepreneur in residence, investor in residence, a business development specialist, and an intellectual property specialist. We're available to you to help you navigate some of those key knowledge areas that, as new biomedical innovators, you may not have the resources to support within your budgets and your companies. So the Small Biz Hangout series is one of the ways that we have developed to help communicate to you those knowledge gap areas in a really basic and jargon minimalized manner to supplement your scientific training. Today, we'll be talking about how to identify and execute a regulatory strategy to support technology development. Small businesses, such as those that get federal funding to support their R&D efforts, may get regulatory advice from different sources throughout their technology development cycle. They need to understand how to identify and rate possible regulatory collaborators, whether those are CROs, consultants, strategic partners, medical advisory board members, etc. Many times, small businesses wonder about the appropriate stage in their technology development to begin learning about and developing a regulatory plan and those regulatory required systems and documentation that will be needed for licensing their technologies. If your exit strategy is to out-license your technology, why do you really have to be concerned at early stages in generating that type of documentation? Also, what types of regulatory knowledge are appropriate to build in-house, and what's best left to the experts? The topics that we cover in our Small Biz Hangouts are those topics that are critical for biomedical innovator success. They cover intellectual property, commercialization activities, regulatory considerations, and the list continues to grow. We hope that by having this ongoing dialogue with you, our community of innovators, that you'll give us that feedback, which we'll be asking for at the end of this presentation. We hope that the questions that you have, you'll feel free to communicate with us throughout this Hangout. You can ask questions in a number of ways. We have a Twitter account, which is at NHLBI_SBIR, and you can direct message us there, or you can tweet using the hashtag SBIRchat, or if you prefer to keep your questions anonymous, you can submit them to us via email at nhlbi_SBIR@mail.nih.gov, and we'll pick those questions up and feed them into our dialogue today. The primary ground rule for questions is that they shouldn't apply to only one specific technology. These Hangouts are intended to be a general conversation, and in order to provide that technology-specific feedback you might be looking for, you'd probably need to give us more information about your innovation than is appropriate in a public setting. So every now and then throughout our live event, we're going to share this slide so that you can get the Twitter handle and the hashtag right, and throughout the presentation, you'll see the email address hovering above my head as I have a halo of a glow of email surrounding me. Today, I'm excited to be joined in our Hangout by two grantees who have received Small Business Innovative Research, or SBIR, awards from NHLBI. Our first panelist is Mr. Brian Lipford, an engineer and a founding partner of Key Technologies, commonly known as KeyTech. where he is currently the Vice President of Strategic Development. In this role, he leads programs to find, develop, and commercialize new medical products. Keytech is an ISO 13485 registered product development company with 35 engineers and designers, developing and supporting new medical devices and instruments for the past 16 years. Keytech has also developed and sold several of its own medical products to strategic partners. Our second panelist is Dr. Jake Rader. Jake co-founded Celdara Medical in 2008 with Dr. Michael Fanger as a way to bridge academic innovation and the marketplace. Celdara has grown to encompass 5 funded programs and a large pipeline, including a CLIA-certified diagnostic service, which is on the market and reimbursed, and a cellular therapy that was sold in January and also entered the clinic this year. Jake had previously founded the New Ventures office at Dartmouth Medical School, managed strategic alliances and internal startups at Cabot Corp, and invested in early-stage technology companies at Polytechnos Venture Partners, a Munich-based venture capital firm. Jake earned a BSc with first-class honors from the University of Waterloo and a PhD in chemistry as a Brown-Wetherell Fellow at Purdue University and Ludwig Maximilians Universität. I welcome you, our audience, and our panelists to today's Hangout, and let's dive right into some questions. So, I have asked my panelists, I provided them with some questions, and we're going to start out with some of these prepared questions. But again, I encourage you, our audience, to please post your questions either on Twitter or through email, and we'll make sure that those questions get answered throughout our presentation today. So starting out, I'd like to ask first Brian and then Jake, what did your small business look for in identifying and engaging regulatory expertise? So Brian?
So in terms of the expertise, we as a company primarily develop diagnostic devices and therapy delivery devices. So we're looking for experts that deal with devices. So I guess that's the first thing. A lot of times our devices, lately we've been doing a lot of molecular diagnostic devices. So again, we're going to look for people that have prepared regulatory submittals in those areas. So we'll ask our regulatory people if the experience that they have on those particular kind of devices and particular market segments of the devices.
Yeah, and so we do more therapeutics, and similarly, the answer's really the same in that domain expertise is everything. And so the most recent example is this cellular therapy, and when we started speaking to people about it, that was the first question: how many cell therapies have you done? And you get an answer, and you ask, well, how many CAR T-cell therapies have you done, and what are the challenges? And you get into the interview focused on the technology, because unless it's a small molecule to a known target, which I think very few SBIR awardees are actually working on, it's probably something relatively new, and it might be something even the FDA hasn't had an enormous amount of precedent in. FDA is always very sophisticated and has a lot of great scientists, but there may not be a lot of precedent to guide those of us outside of the agency as to what to do. And so we always look for that domain expertise. And then we try to cross-check it against a few different sources of regulatory expertise.
So Jake, maybe you could go into that in a little bit more detail. How do you, when you're sort of cross-checking these people, do you perhaps ask for references, or do you do your own evaluation? How many regulatory opinions might you get before you decide to engage with one particular consultant or group, or to follow a certain strategy?
Yeah, so we always check references, and we do everything we can to identify references that aren't necessarily suggested by the company. We try to find others who have worked with them that have had unbiased experience, because as you know, especially with smaller firms, and there are some excellent small consultancies out there, but it can be quite difficult to determine just how valid a particular reference is. So we certainly start there. We ask quite detailed questions and try to really probe into the types of work and the working style of that particular regulatory group. We do diligence on their backgrounds in terms of the principles that we'd be working with. And then, of course, there's the interview, for lack of a better word, or initial discussions to determine just how comfortable we are with their level of domain expertise and how much they can actually bring to the table. Like anything where I find it fascinating that people will go out and they'll get 3 quotes for a piece of equipment, which is important to the business but not strategically critical, and they won't do the same sort of thing for information or advice. And so we certainly do that. Getting bad advice in the regulatory space can set a whole program back, and if you're a small company, setting a whole program back can be the end of the company. And so it's something we take as extremely serious, and we do as much groundwork as we can in advance of actually pulling the trigger.
And Brian, in terms of the regulatory people that you may have interacted with, how important was it to you that they had a geographic proximity and ability to meet with you or your engineers and to really help guide that technology development or understand the data development plan that you're putting together versus the match in terms of background and expertise in a particular medical field, for instance?
Yeah, Chris, so the background and the expertise certainly trumps location. I don't think, so we have a couple of people that we do work with, and so one of them is in Michigan, one of them is on the West Coast, one of them is down southwest, and it really is, it comes down to their expertise in a particular area, and the location really it's not important to us.
Are there any particular questions that you might ask that are sort of common questions you always ask for a regulatory group that are sort of key tells for you about their appropriateness to partner with you as a company?
So design controls and risk management is really kind of the foundation for medical device development. So we're very sensitive to the regulatory person's background and sensitivity to design controls. So a lot of times we will ask them specific questions about design controls to make sure that they understand basically the value of the risk management plan and some of the documents, the baseline documents that have to be in place to support your submissions. So we'll ask questions like that.
And do you look for people to have a certain number of regulatory submissions already accomplished before you're willing to engage with them? Or does having a professional certification, something of that nature, add benefit to you? Or do you see, I mean, where do you put your qualifiers in terms of assessing this person outside of the knowledge of regulations? Like, what to you takes a good to great regulatory consultant approach?
So, I'll take a shot at that, and maybe then Jake can chime in. But so we have a couple of things we've done that we regularly do. So for us, one of the big first steps is that regulatory pathway analysis, where you're laying out your predicates and you're laying out the extent of the clinical work. If you're going to have to do clinical work, how much clinical work? You're really laying out the kind of like the roadmap that you're going to have to follow. So one of the things that we've done, and I regularly do, is I will hire 2, I will vet them like Jake talks, and we do the reference checks, we'll have some conversations, but I've hired 2 regulatory experts, and they don't know about each doesn't know about the other. And I'll ask them each to prepare a pathway analysis, and then I'll compare the documents to make sure that I'll look at the predicates that they've defined and what kind of clinical work, and basically it's great. It's a little more expense, but it's such a crucial document to get right, to know where you're going. It's well worth the price to pay. So that's one of the tricks that we will do.
That's it's funny that you mentioned that, and that's something we're starting to do now as well. So optionality in any important context in your business is so critical to success. And if you don't have a plan B, then you don't have any choice, and you are locked into a particular situation which is never comfortable. And so I think that's a brilliant approach to it. And it's something we hadn't done a year ago, but we've just started to do. And you know, so far so good. I sort of look at it as there are strategic questions like road mapping, and then there are blocking and tackling sort of activities. And at least in our minds, once you're working with the consultants, it's good to know where their strengths are, because some are very good at the strategic and can fall down on the blocking and tackling, and vice versa. And so having two firms there, you can get a sense for where their real strengths are. And in reality, it costs a little bit more, but it certainly doesn't cost twice as much, because generally they're billing on a per hour basis, or even on a project level basis, that you're still going to have half the scope essentially, and just split that between two firms. So I really like that idea, and as I say, we're doing that ourselves.
So Jake, you and I actually first met virtually about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I know that you've had at least one project that got sort of a sideways hit. You had a regulatory path defined, and then all of a sudden a requirement came up that you hadn't anticipated would necessarily arise. Can you talk a little bit about some of the resources that you pulled together to sort of address the unanticipated obstacles that might come up?
Sure. You know, there weren't really additional resources needed. It was another, so there are many regulatory bodies. Everyone focuses on FDA, but there are lots of others out there, including IRBs and other groups that can stop a trial from moving forward, or stop a trial before it starts. And so understanding sequences, and you know, a lot of these groups, they want to be the last one to see something. And figuring all that out, and the logistics with your clinical center as well, was challenging for us. But it wasn't a matter of bringing new resources to bear. It was really a matter of taking the resources we had. We had all the knowledge on the team. It was just a matter of persuading the particular regulatory bodies that what we were doing was in fact a really good thing for patients. And that took some time. We had anticipated a lot of things moving in parallel, and in reality, they ended up moving not always in serial, but not nearly as parallel as we had hoped.
So that sort of feeds into what we learned when we were back in academia, that if you plan an experiment to last for 1 month, anticipate not getting results for 3 months.
Yeah, yeah, and you can't gather 9 women and make a baby in a month either. So that's the. Very true.
Very true. Very true indeed. So, Brian, have you had any experiences where perhaps there's been a change in regulation or a significant design change where you've needed to modify your regulatory strategy? And how have you worked with both within your company and with any outside regulatory counsel that you might have to address these sort of emergent things? You know, science can change, which changes everything at times.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if we've had any specific things like that. We've had some cases where we were pursuing one indication for use, and we were on a 510K kind of pathway, and then we thought we were doing a relatively small change on a different indication, and we were told, basically we walked into a PMA, which is typically something that we'll try to avoid like the plague. So we had to pivot back to our first indication, which, you know, we dealt with, but it was one of those things where, in hindsight, we should have, when we decided to change that indication for use, we should have been a little more sensitive to the implications of the regulatory path.
Yeah, definitely your label claim is always what defines your regulatory path, so you need to be very, very aware when you consider making any changes to that. So let's talk a little bit larger than just the US. If I'm currently working on developing my technology, whatever my technology is, and we'll start with Brian, so I'm going to be developing a medical device or diagnostic, and I have funding through the SBIR program, which supports US development of that technology. Should I still be concerned about my regulatory counsel, whether it's internal or external, having experience outside of the U.S.? Or since my funding is only going to support U.S. development, should I focus entirely on the U.S. at this point? And would that answer perhaps change if it were a device versus a diagnostic?
I don't know if I could add too much to that, other than in terms of the development world of the device, that is where we typically live, we'll have a set of requirements that will fit the U.S. So we'll be designing to 60601 or 61010. Those are IEC standards. But we'll also put in the MDD, the Medical Device Directive standard requirements for taking the product overseas. A lot of the products are international products. So from a product requirement standpoint, which is what we're sensitive to, we'll focus on that. Mm-hmm. I guess I don't know too much about the regulatory environment on those topics, so can't add much more than that.
But in terms of your development plan, you do incorporate the requirements for both markets or for multiple markets. Yes. as you're going through your development. And Jake, from your experience, have you, clinical trials, the larger ones, not necessarily ones that small businesses run, but they do tend to be international in scope these days. Are you looking to EU directives as well as US directives for clinical trial management and design? Sometimes the requirements can be a bit different between economic zones.
Yeah. So regulatory strategy is a subset of the overall company strategy, and so it's a question of what it is that you really want to do with that particular, in our case, generally therapeutic. And I guess I could imagine a situation where you could be a company that wanted to march through all the trials and get to market in the U.S. only. But I really have to think hard to imagine that. It's a global business for therapeutics now, and most biotechs end up getting either international investors or multinational partners at some point. And so you really have to, if you're not an expert in those areas, and even if you don't plan on running trials yourself in the other areas, it's, I think, only good business to have someone with enough expertise to look over your plan and to say, oh, wait, here's a few modifications that will avoid a hassle for a future partner or for you in the future in Asia or in the EU or elsewhere.
And how hard do you look to get that kind of advice? Do you, once you've done your first vetting of the primary consultant that you're going to use, do you perhaps maybe look for someone who's an expert in international regulatory affairs or in Latin America or wherever your next market might be to feed into that plan? Or do you trust that your consultant and sort of do you give them the responsibility for seeking those inputs from their colleagues?
Yeah, so I can't think of a single regulatory consultancy that we've spoken with that doesn't either have significant operations that are wholly owned overseas or else a very strong network of similar size, similar philosophy consultancies overseas. And so I think the demand for regulatory services has defined what the offerings are. And so almost everybody we've dealt with, everyone I can think of, in fact, has that international perspective because it's really, that's the nature of the therapeutics business.
Okay. I'd like to remind our audience that you can certainly submit your questions through Twitter or by email. The email address is hovering over my head at the moment. And I'd like to start by, I notice we have one question already. I'd like to start with Jake for this one. How important is it for your company to understand their regulatory path on their own before getting the consultant or vetting their help? So how much pre-knowledge do you need about a regulatory strategy before you go talk to someone?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I think this is true for any sort of consulting interaction. If you don't know, you're going to spend a lot of money and maybe end up in a bad place. And so I think consultants are exactly that. They're very good at providing answers to questions and to helping aid you, but the idea that you can write a check no matter how large to another group and just sort of clean your hands of it and hope that they'll get things right is a fallacy. That just won't happen. And so you need to educate yourself enough so that you know when things smell bad. The strategy that you heard earlier from Brian about having 2 consultancies is also a nice thing. So when something sounds a little strange to you, given that you're not an expert in regulatory affairs, but you're at least a journeyman, you can go to another expert who's already familiar with what it is that you're trying to do and ensure that they agree with the advice that you've received. So there's no sort of easy way. You have to get up the learning curve at least part of the way so that you can interact with your consultants on a meaningful level.
And if today's Hangout is the first one that you're attending as one of our audience members, I'd like to point out that this is a series, and the very first Hangout that was delivered was on navigating the FDA website. And in that Hangout, I described how to identify some of the Freedom of Information Act redacted publicly available documentation for 510K summaries and approval documentation for both PMA devices and for new drugs and biologics. And you can do some research by looking at similar technologies, whether they're devices, diagnostics, biologics, or small molecules, and sort of see how the agency is thinking about that type of technology, what sort of burden of proof has an innovator needed to show in order to get market clearance or approval for that type of technology. So the resources do exist for you to start understanding this, in addition to the requiring or requesting multiple inputs from multiple consultants or potential advisors. Brian, in addition to your earlier ask for multiple opinions and then Jake's comments just now, do you have any other perspectives on how to make sure you're getting, maybe 2 people both came up with the same wrong plan? How, is there how much knowledge do you develop in-house before asking someone to provide the more in-depth guidance?
Yeah, so Jake is, I think, spot on, and I don't have a lot more to add in that you really, it has to come from, like, I think the C level of the company, from management of your company, to really get your arms around the regulatory material, because you really can get yourself in trouble if you let someone else, if you just try to push it away and keep it at arm's length. It's just not going to work for you. On the comment that you just uttered about the FDA's website, that is really a great website that people should take advantage of. You really should go and try to find your predicates and read up on your predicates. There's just a wealth of information there on the FDA's website, and it's a great searchable material. One of the things that we did that I think it's another little trick, but I think it could add value to people, is when you find some of your predicates, you can actually do a little research. You can do a little digging on those predicates. On one of them, these are the people that are intimately familiar with writing the regulatory submittals about a product that's very similar to yours. Mm-hmm. We did some research and we found the author on one of the papers, on one of the submissions that was a product very similar to ours, and we reached out to that person and hired them for our submittal. So it's kind of like going and targeting and finding your own expert that you know is an expert on that product.
Excellent. So as a small business, and particularly as a medical device business, Brian, what were sort of the first things that you needed to be aware of and build into your company to ensure that your products would be acceptable to FDA and other regulating bodies?
So it really does start with the very boring topic of design controls, I think. A lot of people, especially startups that really don't know what they might be getting into, they're inclined to run off and build a prototype as quickly as they can and start to do preclinical, or maybe build that, try to, answer some questions, and that's great. That's that R&D stage. It's really fun. But as it starts to become real and you start to know what the architect is of your device and you know its sensitivities and you're getting to the point where you're ready to make, I'll say, a more complete device, then you really got to start thinking about design controls and how the design controls are going to build in and tie into manufacturing and tie into the clinical testing that you're going to have to do with production quality products. And so the design controls don't come into the picture right off the bat, but you really do need to understand how the whole process works together before you start running down the road.
So I'm an academic engineer, and I have this great idea, and I start developing it. I'm in that exciting R&D stage. I don't even know what design controls are. Do I go take a class in it? Do I read guidance documents? How do I start to develop that knowledge? Where can I find the resources I need to tell me how to do that?
So I know that there are lots of workshops and conferences that cover things like this. I mean, at a very fundamental, I'm sure you know, but it's just all the inputs and the outputs that you're documenting. And so I think the FDA has some really good documents on it. I remember seeing some webinars that they have available. So all of these things your audience here should take advantage of. And some of these documents, again, some of them are long and tedious, but there are some very good short documents you can find that'll give you the overview of what design controls are all about.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if someone were to do a Google search, there are tons of white papers that take those rather long FDA documents and distill them.
Yes.
Excuse me. So, Jake, similar question for you. As you're starting to develop a new therapeutic type of technology, do you start by just doing the basic research and not worrying about eventually having to do this thing called GMPs and GLPs, or do you start out with a more structured approach? When do you transition there, and is that something that you bring in experts to do, or is that something you grow organically within your company? How does that feed into the regulatory development of your novel technologies?
So it's something that's, I think, highly regimented and well-defined inside Big Pharma. And so there are many steps, and there's sort of a stage gate-like process. You need to pass certain requirements for a certain molecule to get to the next stage, and then the amount of funding goes up, and the amount of attention and FTEs goes up. In a small business, I don't think that's very practical, honestly. And it's more of a continuum where you're ratcheting up the rigor as you move along. Certainly there are some step functions in there when you choose your lead compound and you know that this is what is actually going to be administered to a human. That's a huge step forward, and then from that point on you want to really increase the rigor and documentation and do, if it's not GLP, then things that are GLP-like within the guidances that, again, FDA will provide or has provided. And so there are certain really key points in the development cycle, but the reality of it is, for most of the SBIR companies out there, you're probably at that interface between research and development. A professor or someone inside your labs has invented something or discovered something really exciting, and there's still a little more research left to do to determine, is this really real? Is the efficacy that we see in this one model able to be reproduced in another model, etc. So there's still more research questions to be answered, but once you've really locked down and you say, this is what the product's going to look like, this is how we're going to treat patients, then at that point you really need to increase the amount of effort and time and sophistication around how you're doing your preclinical testing, because otherwise you'll be doing it all again. And that would be very frustrating, I'm sure.
And so that stage gate where you've locked down your lead molecule and maybe you've done the formulation work around it to get appropriate solubility and half-life and things of that nature, at that point, is that where you would perhaps ask FDA for a pre-IND meeting, or do you wait until you have a larger body of data? Where do you choose that interaction point? Do you go before you do your pivotal preclinical studies, or do you go right before you submit your IND?
So I have my own opinion on this. I don't know how generalizable this is, but FDA has now their pre-IND and they have their pre-IND.
Mm-hmm.
And so if this is something, and we see a lot of different types of therapeutics, and if this is something where there isn't much precedent out there in the world on the regulatory side, and maybe something like this hasn't entered the clinic yet, then we'll have a pre-IND meeting as soon as there's enough to talk about. As soon as there's a solid set of data, maybe some safety data as well, we'll request that meeting with FDA so that we can basically plot out the rest of the preclinical development and say, if we bring you all these data, is that sufficient? Then later on in the development, once you've got a clinical plan together and they can opine on that, that's something that's obviously takes a lot of work and thought. Then we would request a pre-IND meeting. We've never done it right before an IND because the IND is then another opportunity to interact substantively with the agency. And so why put them on top of each other? Why not have a little space between so that we can respond to their previous comments? But that's, as I say, that's how we view things, and I'm sure there are other equally legitimate perspectives.
And Brian, in terms of for medical devices working with CDRH, I know that CDRH in the past maybe 3 to 5 years has really tried to turn themselves around from the 800-pound gorilla in the room to being much more interactive and communicative, transparent with industry. Have you found that you're more able to get feedback on your, if you've put in requests for pre-market submissions, pre-submission guidance types of interactions, are you able to get that kind of feedback in a time frame that really helps progress your technology development appropriately and efficiently?
So I don't want to speak as someone who has a ton of experience, but from the handful of data points, it does seem much easier to basically even pick up the phone and have a conversation, an informal conversation, where you can say, these are our thoughts, these are where we were going, what do you think, kind of thing, and get some really good feedback that maybe was harder to get before. So in that regard, I think they have it's easier to reach them. To me, it's easier to talk to them, but that's a half dozen data points.
Well,
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
So our experience with FDA, you hear stories and everybody talks about some horror story with FDA. We've had nothing but wonderful experiences with FDA, and I would say that if I was talking over a beer one-on-one as well. But what I have noticed over that same time period, the sort of 5 to 7 years, is that I think because of the inadequate resources that are provided to the agency, I think they were getting overwhelmed with those types of calls. And so 5, 7 years ago, we could pick up the phone and find our way to somebody at FDA that would sit for a half hour and talk about our thoughts on the regulatory path, whereas now we stopped even trying to do that because of a half dozen attempts that just got sent back and said, here, go through the formal channels. And so that, it's understandable, but boy, was it nice to be able to just pick up the phone and talk to somebody at the agency. Whenever I have the opportunity to talk to my representatives in government, I try to remind them that more resources to critically important agencies like that are a benefit to all of us, and certainly to the small business community.
Absolutely. So some of the more formal processes for interacting with FDA have come out as guidance documents for drugs and biologics. There's a recently re-released formal meetings guidance that kind of specifies in a little more clarity and with somewhat firmer guidelines what should be included in a meeting packet. And for the pre-submission program for devices and diagnostics, that was released, I believe, about a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, and really provided a lot of clarity with the Q-submission program now, where you can just email a question and they'll turn an answer around. Generally, you'll get a response within 24 to 48 hours. You get an answer within a week. And I think that that's really been a boon to a lot of small businesses who didn't realize how accessible the agency really could be. You know, a lot of people get very intimidated by interacting with the government. I'm here to say we're friendly. We're the government. We're here to help, right? That's what you always hear, and then there you go. We throw a big wrench into the works. But, you know, how did you, each of you, and we can start with Jake perhaps, how did you overcome your first initial barrier of, you know, perhaps being intimidated at the thought of interacting with FDA? And do you find that it's more productive, less productive, equally productive to have face-to-face interactions versus teleconferences, or by communicating electronically through email or, you know, just submissions?
Yeah, so we have never had a face-to-face, to my recollection. We've always done things by phone. So obviously, you know, large data files and things need to be sent by email, but the phone's been great, and I think you get a lot more nuance and a lot more quicker turnaround when you're actually speaking to someone on the phone. That's not limited to FDA, of course. I can't say that I think anybody who's watching this is probably an entrepreneur, and so the fear and trepidation associated with picking up the phone and calling FDA, I think, is minuscule compared to leaving your well-paying, secure job and going off on your own and starting. I don't think that should be a problem for anyone. If it were so, I can't remember a conference that didn't have someone from FDA there. They're real human beings. I have friends that work at the FDA, and you know, that it sort of takes it away from this idea that it's a big Greek-looking building, and it's actually just a group of scientists that are concerned for our safety. And so that we never had that. And as I said, we used to just pick up the phone and ask questions, and that was very nice. And all of the formal meetings that we've had have been extremely efficient as well. To have, if you think about the IND process, the agency has 30 days to respond. And you know, we sent them 40 pounds of paper, and that
in triplicate.
And that's not that's one copy. That's one copy.
Right.
40.
Like I said, 40 pounds in triplicate.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's an enormous amount of information, and if you expect that you could send that much information to a consultancy and in a month have them up to speed on what you're doing, there's no chance. But somehow FDA not only can do it, and they actually get back to you and ask very, very good questions, give guidance, and then at the end they make a decision to either allow you to proceed or not. So those interactions have been very positive for us, and if there is anyone that has any fear about it, they just leave it behind. There's no reason for it.
And Brian, have you had the opportunity to have face-to-face meetings with FDA? And if so, have you noticed a difference between a face-to-face versus a teleconference or electronic interaction?
So I think maybe we've had two. So by far, it's like Jake said, by far our primary communications is via phone and submissions. So for us, basically, if we want to do human trials, it's an IDE, and we'll prepare the same kind of massive amount of information and send it off, and there'll be questions. But you know, the process works very well, and I guess for the entrepreneurs that are just getting into this, the one suggestion I would have that I think we've probably all made that mistake is you really want to do your best, do some homework, and develop a plan, and then present the plan with sound reasoning as to this is what you want to do and why, versus going to the FDA and saying, you know, I have no clue what I want to do, why don't you tell me? Because you're just going to open up a door you don't want to open. Mm. So other than that, no, they're, you know, again, it's like Jake said, they're just really good people, and they do want to help, and so it's all good.
Okay, I'd like to remind our audience that you can continue to submit your questions by email or by posting a tweet with the hashtag SBIRchat. And I would like to now bring up one of the questions that we have received, and the question is, it's a two-part question. Can my regulatory consultant communicate with the FDA on my behalf, and do I need to be involved in calls and meetings? So Brian, perhaps you could start with this one.
So yes, you do want to be involved in the meetings. You don't want to let your regulatory consultant be there on their own. And I don't think we've ever done that. I have had the regulatory consultant at the table with me, but yes, you want to be on all those communications, I guess is the short answer.
And has the regulatory consultant actually led the interactions, or has the C team from the company led it with just sort of prepping and briefing from the consultant in advance?
It's the latter, generally. I mean, the consultant will work with us to prepare the material, but also when we're on the phone, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes exactly. But primarily, the management team is leading the discussion.
Okay, and Jake, same questions?
Same answer. You know, it gets back to that point I made at the beginning, which is that consultants consult and they provide advice, but this is your product, and so you're going to live with it for the next, hopefully, decade or more. And we've never, you know, we trust the people we work with, but we've never entrusted that level of responsibility to somebody outside of our company.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to ask one last time if there are questions. If you could please post them quickly because we are running low on time. And I'm not seeing any more questions coming up quite yet. So I think at this point what I'd like to do is I'd like to say thank you to both our panelists and our audience for your very active participation in today's Hangout. We love hearing from you and hearing what works. We do run these Hangouts as a hopefully very valuable service to our community, and we hope that you will take a few minutes to give us some feedback on how we're doing. We have put together a short set of questions that you can access at the website that's currently being displayed. Please do, it's a bit.ly website. It's 0315 for the month of March in 2015. Hangout feedback with H and F both capitalized. Please notice that because it won't come up as a valid web page without that. And if you take just a few moments to let us know how we're doing and what topics might be of interest to you moving forward, we'd love to hear that, and we do respond. You can also sign up for for knowledge about our future events. Our next Hangout is scheduled to occur on April 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and the intellectual property specialist in our office, Dr. Gautam Prakash, will be providing an explanation of how to develop and protect your intellectual property. He's calling this IP Basics for the New Innovator. As with today's presentation, it will be available on both Google Plus and YouTube. And then on May 12th at 2 p.m., Dr. Gary Robinson, our business development specialist, will be hosting a Hangout focused on identifying and connecting with your customer. We certainly hope that you'll join us for these events. Coming up in June, we'll have another regulatory one, and we're going to cycle these through the year. Between now and April 14th, you can stay in touch with our office, the Office of Translational Alliances and Coordination, at the NHLBI by email, by phone, following us on Twitter, checking out our website, and signing up for our listserv. We use all of these resources to help keep you up to date on what's happening in our community and where you might meet up with us face to face. And in closing, I would like to note that the Small Biz Hangouts are organized and presented by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute's Office of Translational Alliances and Coordination. If you are developing a product or technology that falls within the NHLBI mission space, which includes cardiovascular, pulmonary, hematologic, and sleep disorders and diseases, please contact us through our website by phone or Twitter for additional assistance and information about the programs and resources that we can bring to bear to help you with your technology development. If you are developing a product or technology that falls outside of our mission space, we do encourage you to please reach out to a program official in the appropriate institute at NIH. for additional assistance in understanding the SBIR program and in understanding the resources that they may be able to provide to you. A list of the SBIR and STTR contacts can be found at the website listed on this page. And with that, I believe we're at the, I will check one last time, and no more questions have come in. So I'd like to thank Dr. Rader and Mr. Lipford for joining us today and our audience, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.